Transylvania, that is, Erde, Ardeal, or Siebenbürgen, as this region of Romania is called in the languages of the people living here. It's bigger than Switzerland, Belgium, or the Netherlands. Transylvania is in Eastern Europe, in the middle of Romania, surrounded by mountains. It's as far from the North Pole as it is from the equator. Its climate is continental, though in the higher mountains, hikers may get a few surprises. The borders and the extent of the area of Transylvania have changed a lot throughout history, and there have been a lot of debates connected to these issues. Its size today is 60,000 square kilometers, but many people think the territory east of the river Tisa also belongs to Transylvania. So its area could be over 100,000 square kilometers. The people of about 4,000 settlements of Transylvania live mainly from agriculture. There was a change of regime after the revolution in 1989, and all the big factories polluting the environment and showing a deficit were closed down. Village people support themselves by raising stock and some sort of crops. Here it's natural to use a plow towed by a horse and to see horse-drawn wagons on the roads. Corn, wheat, and potatoes are grown the most. Logging the plentiful woods provides the stock for wooden houses and inexpensive but beautiful furniture. It's not unusual for village people to keep poultry, pigs, and cattle. In the mountains, sheep and goats are raised, but buffaloes and donkeys used for carrying heavy loads can also be found. Horse lovers can take pleasure in the sight of the animals galloping freely in many places, and if they feel like it, they can see a real horse market in the villages. The most typical cake of Transylvania, which is also famous for its cuisine, is a cornucopia-shaped pastry. A yeast dough is made from flour, sugar, and egg yolk, which is then kneaded with milk. Then the rolled-out dough is cut into strips. These strips are rolled up on a wooden baking pin and baked above charcoal embers. The sprinkled sugar becomes burnt sugar and covers the horn-shaped pastry with a shiny and delicious coating. The flora of the land of mountains and valleys is still diverse, despite the fact that agriculture, industry, and cities occupy more and more area. Dense, leafy woods, dignified pine trees, and fields with wildflowers alternate with each other in the landscape. Above 2,000 meters, high mountain pines and juniper groves can be found. Above them, only mosses, lichens, and edelweiss grow. The real curiosities are preserved in nature reservations. There, alpine flowers, orchids, and the plants of the peat bog are under protection. Plains and gently sloping hills provide grassy meadows for the animals. The Hungarian, Saxon, and Romanian population keep their traditions, and it can be seen in the uniform appearance of the streets. All houses seem to turn to the inside, protecting the farmyard, the scene of everyday life. From the street, only the gate and the windows of the rarely used, so-called clean room can be seen. Traveling through these typical villages, we almost feel as if time had stopped, and we were in a bygone, more peaceful and quieter world.
Megassak a szívomot, babám határicin túlmész, babám határicin túlmész. Fáj a szíved, ha nem látsz engem, fáj a szíved, ha nem látsz engem. Fáj, 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 de mit tudsz tenni? Fáj, 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 de mit tudsz tenni? Mikor ennek itt kell lenni, két jó szívnek el kell válni.
The diverse landscape of Transylvania is abundant in beauties of nature and relics of its stirring history. Innumerable castles, fortresses, palaces, and churches, but also peasant houses and townhouses hold on to something and tell us about something. There are no settlements, buildings, or mountains about which we can't read in history books, novels, or legends. On the mountaintops, there are ruins of castles. In the ravines, streams flow. In the huge forests, caves can be found. Endless alpine meadows. In the high mountains, shining tarns await visitors. Strange cliff clefts, thermal springs, salt domes, salty lakes, and original pine woods all provide new surprises. In hidden valleys, the bells of century-old wooden churches ring. On the hills, fortified churches with thick walls watch over the countryside. The charm of history surrounds us and reminds of such eras we know passed long ago, but that can be felt even today. The atmosphere of the churches, palaces, mansions, and medieval cities surrounded with walls and towers, and the old cemeteries are enchanting. Transylvania has always been the home of the arts. The books of the great figures of Transylvanian literature fill huge libraries. We can admire the majority of the great works of architecture and fine arts even today. Folk music and the folk arts may be more alive here after the millennium than anywhere else in Europe. Wood carvings are present not only in the form of sculptures, headboards, and building ornaments. The typical elements of the architecture of the country are beautifully carved and in some localities, colorfully painted Székely-gates. These are widespread mainly in Harghita and Dimas. The most beautiful ones can be seen in Hunedoara. While the men are good at carving wood and pottery, the women embroider beautiful tablecloths and make thick woolen carpets. Corond has best preserved the traditions of pottery. The settlement of 5,000 people is the southeast border of the Saltland and is famous for its pottery. Most houses function as workshops at the same time, where the masters make plates, vases, pots, and mugs based on traditional patterns. The most spectacular part is to watch a piece being thrown on the potter's wheel. The master uses the experience of several centuries in his work. After shaping, the enamel is put on. Then the objects are baked. At the beginning of summer, potters' fairs are organized, but we can buy pottery any time of the year. The craft is passed on from father to son, but also the female members of the family often do their bit. Though all over Transylvania the pottery of Corund is sold, we can only be sure of buying an original in Corund from the local manufacturers. The ancestors of the Hunyadis received the castle built on the rock next to the Zalast stream from King Sigismund in the 14th century. It was no more than a small building surrounded by a wall. It had neither an exterior defense belt nor castle walls, but its entrance was protected by a drawbridge. Behind the closed balconies of the facade, a corridor led to the old tower. The castle that can be seen today was built by order of János Hunyadi, the White Knight. Two centuries later, Gábor Bethlen had 2 floors built onto the south wing and 1 floor onto the north one. From the stout Capistrán Tower, the road led to the Nebojsa Tower, which was the final shelter for the defenders. Long ago, a wooden bridge replaced the drawbridge. The torture chamber and the picturesque Hamish Tower lie north of the gate tower. Walking through the gate, we reach the long inner courtyard, which even in its dilapidated condition still boasts a beautifully carved Matthias loggia decorated with the Corvin coat of arms. The loggia and some halls waiting for renovation, including the Golden House, are used for the storage of stones. The stone carvings wait here to be put in their place. The castle was restored by 2 famous architects, Imre Steindl and Frederick Schulich at the beginning of the 20th century, but today it is badly in need of renovation again. From the pentagonal courtyard with an irregular ground plan, we reach the Hall of the Knights, which is divided into 2 aisles by 5 red marble pillars. Above the Gothic Hall of the Knights, the Hall of Parliament can be found. János Hunyadi's wife, Erzsébet Szilágyi, had the beautiful chapel of the castle built. The home of the Hunyadis has been the scene of many historical films. The building is a beautiful example of castle architecture, so it's no wonder the Vajda Hunyad Castle in the city park of Budapest was patterned after it when it was built for the millennium. The castle quarter, surrounded by a wall, stands on a hill overlooking Gyulafehérvár. The star-shaped fortress, built on the ruins of a fortress from the Middle Ages, protects ancient monumental buildings. Gyulafehérvár is also the seat of the Transylvanian Roman Orthodox Archbishop. That's why the Orthodox Cathedral is larger than the average. The representative building was built in 1921, taking the palatial church in Târgoviste as the model. Its belfry is 52 meters high. Ferdinand was crowned King of Romania here in 1922. The interior of the church was gilded lavishly and decorated with several frescoes and icons. In Romania, 68% of believers are Orthodox. Therefore, there are innumerable Orthodox churches in the country. These buildings are well maintained. Their exterior walls are often also decorated with frescoes. Their interiors are decorated lavishly, their icons fabulous pieces of religious fine art. The church is completely surrounded by a cloister, the open foyer of which is decorated with mosaics. On its stone terrace, a lapidarium has been set up. In the pranos, Mihai Vitez casts a glance at us. The only Catholic episcopal palace of Transylvania stands next to the cathedral. The church is the most monumental Roman building of Transylvania. It was built on the remainders of the 11th century basilica. During the invasion of the Tatars, it halfway burnt down, and this was replaced in Gothic style. János Hunyadi had the upper part of its southwestern tower, and Gábor Bethlen had its main molding built. The Renaissance style is represented by the Lászai Chapel, while the western frontispiece is done in Baroque style. On the right of the main entrance are the artistically carved sarcophaguses of János Hunyadi, the White Knight, János Hunyadi the Younger, and László Hunyadi. But King John Sigismund, Queen Isabella, Gábor Bethlen, and George Martinuzzi were also buried here. The cathedral gained its final form with 3 naves after 700 years. Its pillars and stone carvings represent almost every kind of medieval style. The greatest Romanian monarch was Mihai Vitez, the ruler of Wallachia and Moldova. He was a victim of assassination in 1601. In the castle quarter, the city museum was established in the Babylon building, as well as a primary school, a boarding school, a former casino for officers, and the Betlen dormitory can be found. The beautifully landscaped Old Town features the family houses of several important historical families, including the Alpors, the Betlens, and the Botanis. Nagyszeben is considered to be the capital of the Saxons. It was a fortified medieval town along with Brasov, which defended the roads of trade and the Red Tower Strait. Its third wall was constructed in the 15th century and made the town impossible to be invaded. Turkish troops tried to invade it 3 times. Nagyszeben has not only been a cultural center, but also a commercial center for centuries. Having 19 industrial guilds and developed commercial networks, it provided not only Wallachia with goods, but it also had a part in the marine commerce of Levante. The town had outgrown the area surrounded by its walls by the end of the 17th century, and since then it has grown continuously. 5 town gates have been torn down. On their location, new housing estates have been built. Nagyszeben, which was the capital of Transylvania for 17 years, is the county seat today with a lively and evocative atmosphere. The library and the local museum is in possession of 250,000 volumes, and there are 50,000 paintings in its gallery, where we can admire Rubens, Van Dyck, or Tiziano's masterpieces. The oldest building of the city was built in 1292. We can reach the former St. Mary's Church by climbing the stairs from the Hospital Church. Today, it's an evangelical Episcopal church. King Matthew donated the possessions of the abbey in Kertz, which has been foraged by the Turks, to the church in 1464, and from this, the building was extended and decorated. The masterful formation makes the Gothic church valuable. In the crypt of the 3-aisle basilica with transept, a lord of Wallachia, who had been murdered nearby and long forgotten, is buried. Brasov is not only the biggest city of Transylvania, but it also lies very beautifully. It's a county seat with a population of 320,000. It's located in the southeast corner of Barsa at the foot of the mountains of Brasov. It was an important center of transport and commerce even in 1211, when Andrew II conferred the city to the German order. Its real flourishing was under the rule of King Louis the Great. Today, the acceleration of tourism marks the beginning of a second boom. The favorite spot for walking and recreation of the locals is the Central Park, which is linked to the main square by a pedestrian zone. In front of the famous Black Church, Johannes Honterus' statue can be seen. He was a famous German humanist, European famed cartographer, and printer of the 1500s. The Black Church is a great work of European Gothic in the East. In 1689, Imperial General Carafa had the city burnt down and looted. The walls of the church became black in the fire, and since then it has been called the Black Church. Above the southern gate, a Renaissance fresco decorated with Matthias and Beatrix's coat of arms can be seen. In the 65-meter high tower, a 6-ton bell rings. Organ concerts are given on an organ with 76 registers and 4,000 organ pipes. The main square of the old town is just a few steps from the church. In the center, we can see the building of the old city hall, which was built to be the headquarters of the guilds in the 15th century. On its facade, the coat of arms of the town can be seen even today. This square used to be the marketplace of the medieval Brasov and is flanked with monument-like buildings, former commercial houses, blocks of flats, inns, and a church in the Byzantine style. The famous Carpathian Deer Inn was located in one of the houses on the square. The pedestrian and shopping street of the city begins here. Opposite the square, behind the houses, a stream flows. According to locals, King Solomon, after whom the Solomon Tower in Visegrad was named, lived here as a hermit in a cave after Ladislas I was defeated. Opposite the ruins of the former citadel, Sank Mountain rises high. On its top, there was a castle, which was demolished in the 14th century. Tourist routes and cable cars take us to Panorama Inn. We get a wonderful view of the whole city from here. In clear weather, we can even see the peaks of the snow-capped mountains. From above, we can see that the picture of the old walled town seems to be very balanced, even in the 21st century. Modern buildings can only be built outside the wall. The castle in Hunyadvár was built in 1377 to protect the important commercial road leading between the mountains of Fogaras and Brasov. László Kőváry wrote the following in his famous work written in 1852 and entitled The Antiques of Transylvania. It's one of the most beautiful examples of our old castles. The majority looks as it did centuries ago. The walls, built in partly Gothic and partly Byzantine style, still face up to time. Its old tower is surrounded by two lines of Byzantine carvings. Its gate, lined with iron, still works on a chain, as in the past. And the small yard with the well carved in rock and several of the rooms surrounding the yard can still be seen. And they remind us of the age of romance, the fighting era of our fathers. Hunyadvár is the most visited monument of Transylvania for two reasons. The first one is the building, which is a uniquely fairy tale-like romantic castle, but at the same time human scale in its details, and anybody would accept it as their home upon catching sight of it. It has no medieval, gloomy details, and this is the paradox. Because this fortified castle, and this is the other reason for its being visited, is the home of the historical Dracula, who was not a vampire, but a cruel monarch in Wallachia. Vampires are creatures of literature, but in the English-speaking world, Transylvania has become associated with vampires. The Hungarian King Sigismund of the House of Luxembourg supported Lord Vlad of Wallachia to win him as an ally against the Turks. In 1431, Vlad joined the Dragon Order, which was set up by Sigismund, and united the Baron families supporting the throne. Vlad started to use the name Dracul which means dragon in Latin, devil in Romanian, and he used the dragon on his insignia. His son, born in Székely-gates, Vlad Tepes Dracul, inherited the name from him. Dependent on the trends of politics, the young Dracul sometimes supported János and Mátyás Hunyadi with his army, but sometimes he fought against them. King Mátyás imprisoned him in Buda Castle and Visegrad for 10 years. All the contemporary chronicles mention Dracul's cruelty. He's alleged to have had his enemies impaled. Armin Vambery, a famous researcher of the East visiting London, drew the attention of the young Irish novelist Bram Stoker to the Eastern European belief in vampires and to the historical Dracula, who had committed atrocities. Stoker created the famous blood-sucking figure with fangs, glowing countenance, and tuxedo from these beliefs. There are no references to Vlad Tepes Dracul in the castle, in contrast to the market in front of the castle, where you can buy anything that remotely has to do with Dracula. The castle, with its hidden secret stairs carved into the wall, isn't like a museum. It has neither cabinets nor showcases. Beautiful period furniture, fireplaces, and bearskins decorate the interiors. Brasov dedicated the castle to Queen Zita in 1919 when Charles IV was crowned, and 7 years later to Queen Maria of Romania. The romantic, beautifully furnished castle was the favorite residence of the queens, and it still bears marks of the women. There's a wonderful view from the castle of the open-air museum and the village in one direction. In the other direction, of the stream winding at the bottom of the castle, the Fogaras Mountains and Fundata, which is a village built at the highest point in Romania. Winter gives us another view of the region and other forms of entertainment as well. Anybody who wants to get to know Transylvania really should hike in the mountains, which are totally different in winter, but just as beautiful. The open-air museum under the fortified castle shows peasant houses and arts and crafts workshops of the neighborhood. Its market is full of pictures with Dracula's picture and name. Hunyadvár is alleged to have inspired Jules Verne when he was writing his novel entitled The Castle of the Carpathians. Down in the bend of the river, the stone building of the former customs house can be found. From here, it takes 5 minutes to reach the mountains by car. Villagers sell their goods, knitted pullovers, fresh milk, smoked ewe cheese, and goat's milk cheese in the streets, even in winter. Life doesn't stop in winter either. The herd is driven to the snow-covered meadows. Poiana Brasov is a resort, a paradise for tourists and skiers, and the biggest winter sport area in Transylvania. A serpentine road leads to Poiana, lying 1,020 meters high, where we can get on scheduled buses or go by car from Brasov. There are wonderful ski slopes, ski lifts, cable railways, tracks for bobsleighs, and an artificial ice rink awaiting all sports lovers. Sleighs can be rented, or we can just go for a walk in the snowy forest with its magical atmosphere. On cold but sunny weekends or during winter festivals, cheerful noise breaks the silence of the snowy mountains. In summer, camping sites. In winter, heated tourist houses provide accommodation. Snack bars and restaurants take care of hungry tourists and sportsmen. There are people who head for the slopes without equipment, but we don't have to go home in the dark, as most tracks are lit. St. Anne's Lake and Chomad Crater and Mohosh Bog are nature reserves with a unique biosphere not found anywhere else in Europe. If the ice is thick enough in winter, people enjoy ice skating on St. Anne's Lake. On the other side of the hill, Mohosh Bog is also covered by snow. Icicles hang on the trees, snowy pine trees remind us of Christmas, the silence and fresh air beckons us to take a trip even during the icy winter. In one of the craters of the volcanic mountain, a turf bog has been formed. The flora of the moor is very special, and its famous medicinal herbs are mentioned in Maria Treben's book entitled God's Pharmacy. The lake that developed in the twin craters has no spring to supply it. It catches rainwater. It covers an area of 20 hectares. During the pagan era, it was a cult place. During the times of Christianity, it became a place to celebrate the given patron saint's day. Today, tourists come here on a pilgrimage to go boating, breathe in some fresh air, and roast bacon over an open fire. The biggest fortified church of Transylvania is the one in Prejmar. It's bigger even than the famous one in Harman. Although there are fortified churches in many parts of the world, this type of architecture is typical only in Transylvania. Construction on the fortified church in Prejmar began in the 13th century by Cistercian order. In the Middle Ages, especially during the times of the Turks, the inhabitants of the village needed more effective protection than just prayers. This church gave not only ideological protection. Several meters thick, a system of very high halls surround the church. The wooden stairs and terraces are open in the direction of the churchyard. Towards the outside, there are only battlements. The stairs lead to a small number of rooms, which gave shelter for each family of the village in case of trouble. Hundreds of people were crowded here at such times. The animals could graze in the yard, making it difficult to starve out the people of the village. The church itself is a building with transept built taking the one in Kerts as a model. Above the intersection of the cross, the tower rises on a square base. The room of the cross vaults is decorated with ribbed vaults from the 15th century. Instead of the sanctuary, there are typical side chapels in the eastern wing. The church collapsed 2 centuries ago, but its valuable altar has been restored recently. The windows are partly pointed, partly arched. The church holds services even today and belongs to the Evangelical Church. The Museum of Local History has been set up in some rooms of the fortress. Articles for personal use, collected from the church and the village, have been painstakingly collected and are displayed in the small museum with a homey atmosphere. In Lower Chernot, a regional museum has been established in one of the typical Transylvanian mansions in the Domokosh country house. In the yard of this museum of carriages is an extremely rich collection of carts, coaches, and old agricultural tools. Tusnádfürdő is an internationally acclaimed health resort. It was built on the bank of the River Olt, near Lake Kiukas. Its sub-alpine climate, fresh air, green pine trees, and medicinal springs made it famous. Its medicinal water has been known since 1600, but the resort, which is popular even today, was established only in 1845. The settlement still keeps some of the wood-framed villas built at the turn of the century, but unfortunately, the original bath building no longer exists. Csíkszereda, also known as Szeklerborg, is the seat of Hargita County. The angular building of Mikó Castle, with towers at its corners, can be found in the south part of the city. Ferenc Hidvégi Mikó, captain of Csík, Gyergyó, and Kásson, had it built. The castle destroyed by the Turks was rebuilt in 1714. Not far from Csíkszereda, the Franciscan church and monastery of Csíksomlyó is a famous place to celebrate Patron Saint's Day. Its Baroque church was built at the beginning of the 1800s on the site of the Gothic church, built in memory of the victory in Maros Szent Imre by János Hunyadi. Some parts of the original building can still be seen. The 12-meter-high aisle was carved by local carpenters. The wooden statues are the work of Italian and Hungarian masters. The monks who lived here were buried in the crypt. Virgin Mary's miracle-working devotional sculpture is a masterpiece of 16th century religious art. Patron Saint's Day, which is held at Whitsun every year, attracts crowds. The Lazarus family's castle, playing an important part in the history of this part of Transylvania, is located in Gyergyószárhegy, or Lazarea, as it is called in Romanian. Lazarus Castle is the home of several cultural activities, the best known of which is the summer camp for fine arts, which is already over 2 decades old. Pieces of work made during this camp are displayed at a permanent exhibition in the Room of Nights. Anybody wishing to see it can stay at the guest house for tourists set up in the former monastery building. Killer Lake has been the most interesting natural site of Transylvania since the 1930s, when a landslide blocked Békás Brook Valley. The water flooded the valley full of pine trees. We can still see the tops of the pine trees in the lake, preserved by the calcareous and iron oxide-rich water. Next to the snack bar, we can rent a boat by which we can row around the stumps. The 1,500-meter-high Suhardu Mik Peak, the over 1,300-meter-high Killer Mountain, and the 1,600-meter-high Likas Peak surround the lake and shimmer in its surface. The road leading on is as romantic as the lake itself. The stream flows among huge rocks, and the road, dotted with retaining walls and tunnels, leads between the stream and the cliff. Not far from Killer Lake, the monumental rock of the 1,200-meter-high altar stone can be seen. On the plateau under the perpendicular cliffs, the typical arts and crafts of the region are sold: carvings, thick sheepskin coats, and carpets. In the Szováta area, salt was mined even during Roman times. The 5 lakes of the region, Bear Lake, Hazelnut Lake, Black Lake, Red Lake, and Green Lake, contain water which is so salty, swimmers almost float in it, like in the Dead Sea. Moreover, the mud and plants of the lakes are medicinal. The climate of the medicinal resort, established at the west foot of the Gurgain Mountains, is extremely mild and pleasant. Of the 5 lakes, the beach of Bear Lake is the most developed. In the surrounding area, several wooden-framed villas, similar to those near Lake Balaton and at resorts in Austria, echoed the atmosphere of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The small picturesque stream is lined with holiday homes and camping sites. In Székely-gates, one of the main attractions is the Gervasivus country house, famous for the fact that Sándor Petőfi, the revolutionary Hungarian poet, spent his last night here before setting off to the Battle of Fehéregyház near Székelyvár. Székelyvár, or Stenarum, was built in the beautiful valley of the Great Kukoliensis in a hilly basin. Székely and the Great Kukoliensis form a frame around the castle hill. The city consists of 2 parts, the lower town and the upper town. The latter means the castle section, which was built on a 72-meter promontory. The lower town has mostly lost its medieval form. Except for the building of the marketplace, only modern buildings can be found here. The hustle-bustle of modern city life contrasts with the bygone mood projected by the castle. The castle is protected with a system of thick walls totaling a kilometer in length. Its 14 towers were named after the guilds working here: smith, bootmaker, tailor, furrier, butcher, ropemaker, tinsmith, and tanner. The castle can be approached through the gate under the clock tower, which was built in the 14th century. It was here that the town council held its sessions. Every hour on the hour, various figures go round, similar to the clock towers of Prague or Munich. After the fire in 1676, a master from Salzburg, Philipp Bonge, restored the tower in Baroque style. The evangelical fortified church is just as old as the clock tower. In one of the houses of the castle quarter, Vlad Tepes Dracul, the historical Dracula, was born. There's a joint European movement to save this group of monuments from decay. The facades of several interesting townhouses belonging to craftsmen and tradesmen have already been restored. Cluj, or Kolozsvár, the second biggest city in Transylvania after Brasov, is a county seat. In the main square in front of St. Michael's Church, King Mátyás's equestrian statue, made by János Fadus, can be seen. This has become the symbol of the city. The city was called Napoca in the Roman Empire, and for this reason, its Romanian name is Cluj-Napoca even today. It's always been the most important city of Transylvania as a university city and the center of political, literary, and artistic life. This is the end of our Transylvanian outing. We hope that we've been able to whet your appetite and that you too will soon visit the beautiful sights of this most unusual area.